Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Happy So What Day. I hope you're having a great start to your week. Today, we are celebrating a couple of things. First off, it's April Spool's Day. That's right. April Fool's Day. You know what that means? That means we're having an amazing deal at sulky.com. It is, let me just pull this up so I can get all the details absolutely perfectly straight for you so I don't, misspeak about it. But if you are subscribed to our email list, if you get our newsletter, then that means you are getting a reminder every time we go live here on So What. And so you probably saw in my email this morning the April Fool's Day deal. And if you're interested in getting on that list, it's really great because you get first access to all of our sales. You get special coupons every so often. You get special invitations for our sessions and special events. And then you also get a newsletter every month that kind of tells you about the happenings in Sulky Land, as I like to call it. So for April Fool's Day, we're having a special deal on all of our rayon threads. So all you have to do is buy one spool and you get two for free. They have to be the same size and type of thread, so it has to be rayon thread. So all you have to do is put 3 spools in your cart and you will get 2 of them for free once you go through the checkout. Amazing deal. So for April Fool's Day, I hope that you are taking advantage of that. It is the small spools, the king spools, the maxi spools. Let's see. Yep. Put all 3 of the same size in. They don't have to be the same color, but they have to be the same size. And you will just automatically get 2 for free. It's amazing. Love that. April Fool's Day. So I was thinking, how am I going to, I don't know, what kind of pranks am I going to pull today? And I just, I have some mixed feelings about April Fool's Day in general. I guess because I was always pranked by my older sister growing up, and it just never really made me feel very good. But, I love a little trick here and there, like, for example, making spaghetti out of ice cream. You could put ice cream through like a food mill or something, or one of those contraptions that makes like zucchini noodles. I've heard if you really freeze up ice cream, you could put them through there. They'll come out looking like spaghetti. Then you can put like strawberry syrup or something like that on them. So it sort of looks like spaghetti. But I mean, who are we fooling here? Clearly it's ice cream. But anyway, little things like that I always get a kick out of. So I love that Sulky does April Fool's Day. And instead of pulling a trick on you, we give you a great deal on thread. All right. So take advantage of that for sure. The other exciting thing about April 1st is that it is the start of National Serger Month. Did you know there was a Serger Month? There's a National Quilting Month, a National Embroidery Month. There's also a National Serger Month, which happens to be April. So we are kicking things off today here on So What, talking about all things serger related. You could see I've got my serger out. I actually have 2 sergers because I love using a serger. And it really, every time I ever talk about sergers, people say to me, I just don't get enough use out of my serger. I want to use it more often. I love working with it. What else can we make with our sergers? So we're going to talk about that today. So if you do have serger related questions, or any questions for that matter, put them in the live chat and in the comments of today's live stream, and I will address them as we move along. I particularly want to talk about thread for your serger because that's right, you don't have to buy serger thread for your serger. So we're going to talk about that today as well. So if you have questions, put them in the chat. And as long as you are doing so, if you're engaging with the post somehow today, giving me a thumbs up or, a heart emoji, putting a comment or a question in the chat, somehow engaging with the post, that's all you have to do. to be automatically eligible to win today's gift from Sulky. That's right. We give away a gift on every single week from Sulky to one lucky viewer who is watching and commenting and doing all of those things. And you also need to like our Facebook page or subscribe to our YouTube channel if you're watching there. And that way we can contact you if you happen to be the random winner for today's gift, which is a registration for our Basics and Beyond Serger sewing session. So you will be granted access to this session over on our education platform, which is sewingonline.sulky.com. And you will have all access to this session, which includes tons of videos that not only introduce you to kind of the world of sergers, but reintroduce you. If you have a serger and you just don't think it gets enough play in your sewing room, or if it's gathering dust in your closet and you just don't know what to do with it, or maybe you always use the same 4-thread overlock stitch on your serger and you never, change it, or you always keep one, thread color in it because you're intimidated about threading it. This is the session for you. It is really geared towards the absolute beginner, but also anybody who needs a refresher course on getting to know their serger again. So this also includes Serge as you go projects. So you'll learn how to make a flat locked table runner, and you can use the exact same techniques to make a pillow as well. It comes out looking so beautiful, and using a serger is just so quick and easy. A funny story, actually, before we kind of dive into all things serger. Long ago, I was on the Marie Osmond show as a guest, and I came on to share my love of sewing. And I don't know if you know a lot about Marie Osmond's background, but she really was a champion for the sewing industry for a long time, still is. And she had a line of sewing machines with Janome, actually. And when she had her show, it was on the Hallmark Channel, the Marie Osmond show, they would very, very rarely do a little craft or something like this. And I just kind of was obsessed with getting on that show and just promoting sewing in general. And I was with the sewing magazines at the time, and we were launching our new Sew It All magazine, and I wanted to, get the word out, all these things. So I kind of stalked their Facebook page and their social media accounts for a good while. I mean, we're talking I don't even know, 6 months. Every day I would go on there and plead my case for why I, should be a guest on the show. And lo and behold, one of their producers finally called me and they invited me to be on the show. So I had to come up with a project that we could do in 2.5 minutes. Now, obviously, we were not going to be able to do an entire project, but I wanted to actually sew. I didn't want to have to hold up things and, not have people see the actual act of sewing. And I wanted to sew on a sewing machine. I didn't want to sew by hand and make it look more arduous than it needed to be. So I brought a serger and I brought a sewing machine, and I cut out some little mini pajama pants because I think pajama pants are like the gateway into the world of serging, because you can finish a pair of pajama pants so fast. And when you use a serger, they look like they're so professional. It looks like you bought them at a store or at a boutique. And then you can also use a sewing machine for sure. But I wanted to show people that no matter what tools you have on hand, you can still have a professional looking end result. Well, Marie Osmond got very kind of competitive with me about, during rehearsal and whatnot, I think our rehearsal was 30 seconds, maybe. In fact, I'm not even sure if she was there for it. I can't remember. It's all a blur, but that part of it, at least. The segment for me felt like 3 hours in our 3 minutes that we had, but at any rate, so we sat side by side and we sewed these pajama pants. We basically did like the outer seams and the inseam, and then we, lifted them up because there's no way we could do a waistband and a hem and all those things. So for that, I just kind of showed the finished project. But I wanted to show side by side the differences between those two machines. And she just really was like, put me at the sewing machine and I'll kick your butt. I'm going to sew them faster than you. And I was like, well, you may sew them faster than me, but are your pajama pants going to have this kind of finished edge? Or are they going to have just a stretch stitch on them, right? Because had she sewn the seam and then finished the seam allowances independently with a zigzag stitch, she would have been left in the dust of me at the serger. At any rate, I think we kind of came out pretty even because she was just sewing a straight seam. And at any rate, all that to say, pajama pants, sergers versus sewing machines, you can use either one for working with stretch fabrics, which is really one of my main benefits of using a serger for me is, when you're working with stretch fabrics, slippery fabrics, even plushy fabrics like fleece, minky, like if you like to make fleece hats, sweater knits, things like this. Whether you are using these types of fabrics for quilting, I saw somebody in the chat talking about quilting, and we'll get to that too. Or if you just like to work with knits, leggings, pajama pants, wraps, robes, things like this. Not a huge commitment to apparel sewing, but, every so often we like to make something a little personal, especially pajama pants. At least I do. The serger makes it so easy to tame that stretch and to make sure that you're getting a nice stitch that will stretch with your fabric without popping. So if you've ever tried to make a pair of, let's say, pajama pants or leggings or something similar, and you go to put them on and you hear that popping of the seams, that's because either your stretch stitch was too narrow, so not enough of sort of a zigzag or a lightning bolt going on with your stitch. Maybe you just tried to sew a straight stitch on your knit fabrics or your other stretch fabrics. The minute you go to put it on and it stretches around your body, you hear that popping sound. That is the thread breaking. It has nothing to do with the quality of the thread. It has everything to do with the fact that the thread is not stretching with the fabric. So when you use a serger and you set it to a 3 or 4 thread overlock, not only are you getting a stretch stitch, let me show the other side. You can see this is a 4 thread overlock. So I have my 2, what seem to be straight stitches. Those are my 2 needles. And then I have the thread looping around. Those are my 2 loopers. So in total, I'm using 4 threads in the machine. A 3 thread overlock would also work with these, but I like to use a 4 thread for that extra reinforcement along the seam. And then you can see that this totally stretches with your body without popping. Stretches with the fabric in either direction, no popping seams, and it doesn't pull out of the seam line or pull away from the seam line when you stretch it either, because you've got those 2 rows of stitching that are kind of like stepping stools from each other. What am I trying to say? You get the idea. All right, so love using a serger. I even use it when I am attaching the waistband of things. See how that stretches so nicely? No popping sounds, nothing. Love it. All right, so I'll get to these pajama pants momentarily. But that's my Marie Osmond story for anyone that wanted to hear it. Or if you didn't, I guess you had to sit through it anyways. All right, Cheryl says, excited for Serger Month. Just learning, so loving these tips. Yes. Oh, Maureen has a great tip too. I serge the raw edges of all my new fabrics and then toss them in the wash. That is such a great tip. whenever we put our fabrics in the wash, especially if it's just yards and yards of things, right? We just come home from the fabric store. It's a great idea to serge all those raw edges, and then you have much less raveling, if any at all, during the washing process. And then when you go to use your fabrics, you can easily determine what has been washed and ready to sew and what hasn't, because you'll see that serged edge. So that's a really great tip. Love it. Just got a new air thread serger. Hey, Judy, good to see you. All right, Harriet says, do you have to use 4 spools of the same color? Great question. You don't. You can use whatever thread colors you want. So in this sample, in these cute little spring Eastery themed pajama pants that I have here, because you know what? I try to always make my kids pajama pants for Christmas time. And I love to give them to them on Christmas Eve as sort of like a pre-Christmas present. And then everybody gets in their pajamas. They go to sleep that night. And when they wake up on Christmas morning, they're all wearing their cute pajamas for pictures and all that. So I have done this for years and years. And I will say, now that they're getting a little bit older, I'm getting a little bit lax in the Christmas pajama making. Also, now that they're a little bit older, sometimes they still fit in those pajamas from the previous year, which was not always the case, right? They would fit into pajamas for like 3 months and need new ones. But now they're kind of able to, at least for a little while, we'll see what happens this year, to wear the previous year's ones. But when I was at the fabric store during the Joanne closeouts of the century, right, I found this cute Eastery themed stretchy fabric, and I had to make some pajamas. So now my girls are getting these pajamas for Eastery timing, and this is a really great pattern to use. This is called the 11th hour pajama pants pattern, and I forgot to link to it in the description of today's post, but we're going to put the link in the chat for you if you're interested in this pattern. It fits kids, oh my gosh, I just have the sizes on my brain. I think it goes up to size 16, and it's like 6 months to size 16, something like that. It's a huge range of sizes. So you really, really get a lot of mileage out of this pajama pants pattern. And during the COVID era of our lives, I did a pajama pants sew along on our YouTube channel. It's in 2 parts, and I use this 11th hour gear pattern. And actually my son makes an appearance in both of the sew along videos, because you know what? We were distance learning. We were homeschooling. We were doing all those things. So I had him come on and be a guest on this sew along, and he actually helped me cut out the pattern pieces. He used he loved using the serger. He thought it was the coolest thing. It was so loud, and it, did all these things, and he didn't really have to do much, but kind of watch it go through the machine, and he just absolutely loved the serger. But at any rate, this is my go-to pattern. And I guess until my kids outgrow it, I will still be using it since it goes up to a size 16. So this pattern has a lot of different versions to it too. It has this elastic waist you can go for. You can also do a ribbed waistline or a ribbed sort of casing and do some buttonholes and add some cording in the front for a different waistband treatment. It also has these great front slit pockets, which I really prefer to a side seam pocket, especially in pajama pants. It's just a lot more comfortable to wear. You don't have these kind of bulky pockets, kind of poking out along your hips. So I really love this front pocket. It has a really nice big pocket bag as well. So really roomy pocket. And then you can choose, of course, the hem that you want to do as well. They have a jogger version in this pattern that you can use the same treatment you use on the waistband. So if you're using like a ribbing fabric, you can use that on the cuff, kind of bring it together and cinch it for like a jogger, or you can do a separate cuffed hem. I haven't hemmed these yet, but we're getting there. Or you can simply fold the hem under, which I really like to do this with my girls, especially because I know they're going to have a big growth spurt probably by this summer. They're headed to middle school, and so I just feel like they're just going to shoot up like weeds, and then the pants will fit them on the waist and, not in the length. So what I like to do is I'll fold this under and then fold it back like this, and I'll do a blind hem. And then when they grow out, or when they grow up rather, I can just take that hem out, and then I can do a narrower sort of cuff along the bottom and get a little bit more wear out of the pajama pants. And then I do another blind hem, or you can even do an overlock stitch, kind of like a top stitch treatment on your regular sewing machine. Or if you have cover stitch capabilities with your serger, or you have a cover stitch machine, then you can cover stitch the hem. But I just find that that's a lot harder to pick out if you do want to then take the hem out and, elongate the pants. Another idea for getting a little bit longer wear out of pajama pants for kids is, instead of taking out that hem, let's say you did a cover stitch or an overlock stitch and there's so many stitches to remove, what you can do is just slice off the hem and then get a matching fabric in the same stretch. So if it's 50% stretch, 25% stretch, get the same degree of stretch on that fabric, create a separate cuff out of your contrast or your solid fabric that matches, and add that cuff to it to elongate the pants later on. Great tip even for store-bought pajama pants. Just cut off that factory hem, add a contrasting strip. All of a sudden you have a cute custom pair of pajamas, and you're getting a little bit more life out of it. As long as, of course, the waist is still fitting the child or the person that you're sewing it for. All right, so yes, pajama pants I really think are like the gateway into getting to know your serger. And also, with that pajama pant pattern, you can also make a pair of shorts. So you don't need a huge fabric investment. And as we're heading into more spring and summer, you might want the shorts variety instead. But, it's another great way to teach kids how to sew. I mentioned my son was in those videos with me, and he did all these really long, straight outer seams. And then he even did the inseams of his pants as well. Because, you're really just learning to sew that straight line. And when you're using the serger, you can butt up your fabric against the serger blade. And, kids aren't going all wonky and not sewing straight, because they can just watch and make sure that that edge of the fabric is, coming in contact just ever so slightly against the serger blade. And I find it's actually really easier for them to sew straighter when they're using a serger versus using a sewing machine. Now, there are, of course, attachments and tapes and things like that you can use as a seam guide while kids are sewing, or even for yourself. I do it all the time. I'll even sometimes use my quilting guide and put that along the seam especially if I'm sewing something really long or bulky and I can't see the lines or the markings on my sewing machine bed. I'll use my quilt guide as kind of like my seam guide, so that I can abut my fabric against that, making sure that I'm sewing nice and straight. All right, lots of people are talking about using their serger, taking serger classes. Susie Q says, I took a serger class 20 plus years ago, and it is so worth the time it takes the scare out of using it. Yeah, I really find that people they get a serger to do just what I showed you, this 4-thread overlock or a 3-thread overlock. And then that's kind of it. And there's so many other things you can do with your serger. So speaking of serger education, today in the description of today's post, you will find a link to our serger buying guide. So if you're in the market for a serger, or if you want to upgrade your serger, or you have no idea what to look for in a serger, this is a really great starting point. So you'll find a link to download this PDF. It's a one-page PDF, but you can print as many as you want. You can fill it out for the make and model that maybe you're interested in. Maybe, you have all the same brand of machine and you want to stick with that brand. A lot of the language and terminology is the same between brands. So that kind of makes it easier, as a beginner especially. You can fill out the make and model you've been looking at. What kind of sewing do you like to do normally? Is it garment sewing? Is it quilting? What will you be using the serger for, you think? Mostly home dec items, etc. You can fill out, the threading. Do you want it to auto thread? Do you want it to have an air threading mechanism? Which I think is just a game changer in the world of sergers. Both of the sergers that I have are air threading models, and it just makes it so easy and takes that intimidation factor down. I think a lot of people are super intimidated by threading their serger. A lot of the times you need this tweezer and you have to get into the guts of the machine, and an air threading system just totally eliminates all of that. So it makes it really easy to do decorative applications. And getting back to the person that asked if you have to use all the same thread in your serger, absolutely not. What I like to do, and actually when you're learning to use your serger, it's a great idea to put 4 different colors in it. That way, when you stitch out some samples to kind of get a feel for what the machine is doing, you can take a look at your sample and say, okay, the red thread I had in the left needle, this is where that is stitching out on my fabric. The yellow thread I have right next to it in the second needle, that's where this is sewing out. This looper looks like this, and this looper looks like this. So when it's all 4 different colors, you can easily see what's happening. And if any of the loopers are loose or something needs fixed, you can look at your sample and be like, okay, so the right looper thread is the one that doesn't look right. That's the one I'm going to rethread and test out and maybe tweak a little bit. Makes it a lot easier to get a nice balanced stitch, get all of your settings figured out. Then you can rethread with the threads that you want to use for your project. You can also use thicker threads in the looper for decorative applications. Sergers are really great for constructing garments that don't need a lining. For example, if you're using like a neoprene fabric or a sweater knit, something like that, you can use some matching thread in your needles, like a 50 weight cotton thread or a 40 weight poly deco thread. And then for your loopers, you can choose some decorative threads that kind of go with, let's say, the sweater knit pattern, or add a pop of color inside of the jacket or garment or whatever it is that you're making. A lot of people will also do like fleece blankets, and to finish them, just serge the edges because the fleece isn't going to fray. And the serger stitch, you can make it a little bit wider, and you can do decorative loopers. And you can go all the way to like a 12 weight cotton thread in, let's say, a blendables variety. So lots of colors to it, much, much thicker thread. Put those in the loopers. And then when it wraps around the edge of the blanket to finish it, you're getting that decorative, heavyweight, almost yarn-like look to the finish of your blanket. And it's so much easier than, binding it and all these things. And you're giving it this really cool look. All right. I'm just seeing everyone has such great comments right now. Thank you so much for putting those in the chat. Suzanne says, air threaders are the best. I have a neck problem that makes it impossible to thread a serger, and the air threader saves the day. I mean, it's so great. Susie wishes she had an air threader for her regular sewing machine. I hear ya. So hard to see those things sometimes. Um, let's see. Oh, Penny says, I had an old baby lock and it was a real challenge to thread. I was surprised at how much the shop gave me as a trade-in. Um, yeah, you never know until you go and chat with them and take a look. Bring in your buying guide that you have filled out. Do you want accessories? What kind of stitch capabilities do you want your machine to have? Do you want to be able to use accessories like binding feet or piping feet or cording feet? That's right. There are specialty feet that you can attach to your serger for the applications that you like to do. And it makes it so much easier. I've used some of these serger feet and they're so fun and make your sewing so much more accurate and so nice. Do you want an upgrade option? Are there any special deals? Are there some sales that they know about that might be coming down the pike that you aren't aware of yet? So maybe you can delay your purchase, 7 to 10 days. Maybe they will give you that special deal ahead of time to make the sale. So, ask those questions, bring in that buying guide, and you're going to look like you've done your homework. You know what you want. And I think that you're going to have a great experience if you're in the market for a serger, those types of things. All right. Linda says, I use my serger to sew snowballs for a toss game at Christmas. Snow, much fun. Love it. Okay. Susan says, I do use mine mostly for PJ pants. Love that. Along with this 11th hour gear pajama pant, I did want to mention too, very important when you're looking for patterns out there. If you have a stretch fabric, you need to make sure that your pattern says for stretch fabrics. We have a great pajama pant pattern on our website. It's free. It's just called Kids Pajama Pants. This is for woven fabrics. All right. So if you go to make this pattern out of a knit fabric, your pajama pants are going to be huge. Okay. Because when you sew for stretch fabrics, the pattern takes into account that the fabric's going to stretch around your body. So you really need to be cognizant of that when you're purchasing patterns. I'm sure most of you know this already, but it's just a tip I like to put out there because sometimes when I talk about this 11th hour gear pattern, because I use it a lot, as I mentioned, I've made it in multiple sizes. People get this one confused with that other pattern. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. This kid's pajama pant is for woven fabrics. It's shown in a flannel. It's got pockets and cuffs, so totally different than the the pattern that I just showed you. All right, so I mentioned our Basics and Beyond Serger sewing session. This is at sewingonline.sulky.com. It's a start anytime session with tons of videos that help you navigate your serger. And this is what I'm giving away as the gift from Sulky today for one lucky viewer who is watching and commenting and all of those great things. But we also have Next Level Serger Success. This is another serger sewing session, but it kind of takes you up a notch. All right. So we sort of assume you have your serger. Maybe we, assume that you know basic stitches like those 3 and 4 thread overlock. Maybe even you already are familiar with the flat lock stitch. Now we're going to talk about accessories. We're going to talk about tension settings for different stitch looks. We are going to talk about quilting as you go using a serger. So I remember in the chat, somebody was saying, I want to quilt on my serger. And it's actually really fun to do it this way. And what I like about that serger stitch is it kind of compresses your fabrics, like the fibers with your batting in between when you're quilting. It kind of compresses those. So it helps reduce a little bit of the bulk along those seam lines. So if you're familiar with Quilt As You Go, This means, let's say we're making a simple strip quilt, okay? Just rectangles of fabric, and we are piecing them together for our quilt. When you quilt as you go, you're taking your batting and your quilt top fabric, and then your quilt back fabric, right sides together, and you're sewing that seam, and then you are pressing it open, and then you add your next strips in a similar fashion so that your backing is wrapping around to the back, and then you're sewing the next seam to the raw edge. So instead of having a quilt top that is pieced, basically your entire quilt is pieced with front, batting, backing in sections. And as you go along, you have no exposed raw edges except for the very, very edge ones where you start and finish. Then you would bind the whole thing and your quilt is complete. So you are quilting everything together as you piece or as you go. You can do the same thing using your serger, and we show you how in this serger sewing session. You learn how to make a simple table runner with the quilt as you go technique, but you can apply that technique to larger quilts, smaller little coaster projects, any real quilty project you want to tackle. So again, when you're sewing all those layers together, that serger stitch kind of compresses it along the edge, making it easier for you to sew your next sort of chunk or your next, piecing sandwich onto it. Whereas if you use your sewing machine to quilt as you go, you kind of need to go in and trim away some of that bulk so that you don't have these real, rigid sort of like mountain peaks along your seam lines. Everyone following me there? All right, so this is a really great session as well over at sewingonline.sulky.com. Comes with that quilt as you go pattern, lots of video lessons. Both of these that I've talked about are taught by Katrina Walker, who is a Husqvarna Viking educator. She is like a serger queen. She knows everything about sergers, and you learn directly from her in all of these videos. Also, as with all of our sessions, there are Q&A blocks on the lesson pages, so you can ask questions directly when you are working your way through each lesson. And then we all get pinged. We can get the right person for the question at hand and get right back to you. So you have really great support while you're working your way through these sessions as well. So this is another one. Somebody just said, I just got a new serger, so this will be great to see. Yes, perfect. Leslie says, I saw a suggestion to use a fusible thread in one looper for serging on the quilt binding to turn and iron. Wow, that sounds fancy. Love that. There are just so many things out there. Perfect. Barb says, will this class show me how to add decorative elastic to a tulle skirt? That's very specific, Barb, but great project idea. That is not included in those classes, but we do talk about using different serger feet. And so you might find that one of those feet is great for applying elastic, is great for applying decorative trims, and you'll see them in action as well. And I think you'll find too, if you already have a serger, just upgrading with an accessory pack or a specialty serger foot or something like that can just kind of refuel your creativity and inspiration for using your serger, especially if there's something that you're always sewing, like I'm always sewing elastic, or I'm always adding beaded trim to something, or I'm always binding something. The serger binding attachment is one of the coolest things. You can add binding so easily on your serger with these really, really cool binding feet. And that is shown in action in this next level serger success session as well. So lots of great information within those. All right, let's see. Oh, Catherine says, I've done the fusible thread binding and it works great. Fantastic. I attach my binding with the serger all the time. Fusible thread in the looper. This seems to be a going trend. Love that. Thank you all for your comments. All right. So speaking of pajama pants, I think, as I said before, I think it's a really great gateway into using a serger and a great intro to sewing garments if you're new to sewing garments, because pajama pants are so forgiving. They're so roomy and comfortable, and also you really only wear them at night or maybe on the weekends if you're just hanging out, right? So it's not like you're going to prom in them, right? So we can just be a little low stress and create some pajama pants, have something to wear. They go together simply. It's the outer seams, the inseam, the waistband, and the hem. So not a huge amount of sewing, not a huge commitment, and I think you'll really love the results. Find a pattern that you love, that you can understand the language of, and, start off small. Maybe you have a neighbor who's expecting a baby, or a niece or nephew on the way, or, a little one that you can sew for, Easter coming up or a birthday. Create a small baby pair of pajamas. I know a lot of us used to learn to sew for our dolls. It's a really great way to, learn something new because we're just using a small amount of fabric. So we don't have to cry ourselves to sleep because we wasted all, 3 yards of fabric on some pajama pants, or, 1.5 yards, whatever it is. So look at it that way, make a mini version of it, finish it, and then go to something larger or, more appropriate in size. All right. So speaking of that, once you have made a pair of pajama pants, once you kind of, have a little bit more confidence in your serger settings and things like that, may I suggest you move on to making a pair of leggings or making a pair of lounge pants. Some of you I know, because I recognize your names, have taken our favorite leggings video cast. So this is only $5.99, and this leggings video cast is a start anytime video over at sewingonline.sulky.com. Someone wanted me to restate the website, so there you go. I also linked directly to all of these sessions, all this education, and some kits that we have available in the description of today's post. So if you're not seeing that, click on the See More button, or it might just say More, and then the whole description will pop out and you'll find links for all these things I'm talking about today. So this leggings video cast shows you how to copy a favorite leggings pattern and create a new pair. So if you're like me, I basically have like 2 go-to pairs of leggings, and I love them so much and I can't find them anywhere else. And when I try to get another pair of leggings, I either don't like the fabric, or I don't like the fit, or the waistband is weird. And so I love this video cast because I can take my favorite leggings, pattern them, keep the pattern, and now I can use that to create all the subsequent leggings that I need in my life. So also in this video cast, you will learn some different waistband treatments. Let's say you want a crossover waistband instead of an elastic fit waistband. Let's say you want a fold over waistband. So whatever kind of fit you want, you can pattern that out with tips from this video cast. We also talk about varying degrees of stretch in fabrics, different fabric types to use. So while I was thinking about this video cast, I thought, well, I better go to sulky.com and see if we have kits still available for that leggings class, because we have restocked those kits a number of times, and I know that the fabric didn't exist anymore. So I went on sulky.com so that I could tell you if there were kits available, and guess what? We have this kit in this brushed pink tie-dye. It's like a pinkish, purplish, creamish color. Great for spring, great for summer coming up. A little bit of gray thrown in there as well. It's a really, really pretty brushed spandex fabric. Very great coverage. It's a nice fabric weight to it, so you're not going to get the show through, when you bend over and things like that. Very important when you're making leggings. This is on sale for $9. This kit. It's like $9.25 or something like that. $9.49. It is under $10 for this kit. You get 2 yards of, I want to say 58-inch wide fabric. Double check when you go and check this kit out. So very, very wide yardage. I think it fits up to like a 3XL. So small to XXL, something like that. You also get a spool of polydeco thread in that gray color that matches with the gray that's kind of running through the fabric. And you get a pack of super stretch needles. Now, this is the sewing machine version of this kit, meaning you get 1 spool of thread. So if you do want to create leggings or even our lounge pants pattern, which I'm going to get to momentarily, using this fabric, because why wouldn't you just buy it at $9 and whatever cents? Crazy. I think per yard, this fabric is almost $20 a yard. And we're giving you 2 yards of fabric, a king spool of thread, and a pack of needles for under $10. This is not an April Fool's joke. I'm not even kidding. Great, great deal. All right. Also, once these are gone, that's it. They're gone. We will not be restocking this because this fabric doesn't exist anymore. So, limited edition, fantastic print. Love it. All right. So, this can be used for your favorite leggings. It can also be used for our walking pants pattern, which is part of our lounge pants embroidery session at sewingonline.sulky.com. So these lounge pants are a little bit roomier for the fit. The cut of the pattern is a little bit roomier than a leggings pattern would be, which, leggings are going to be, skimming your skin, versus this lounge pant pattern is a little bit roomier and it has pockets on the side. Love a pocket. So these are also available in some different lengths, the pattern that comes with this session. You can make like a boot cut or a flared leg version. You can make a capri leg, and you can also make shorts. Pockets on either way. You can omit the pockets or leave them. They're just a straight pocket that goes down that side panel on the leggings, very popular or on the lounge pants rather, very popular in capris, in joggers, in leggings. And then it has a nice flat waistband treatment, so a very flattering fit. But you could see I'm wearing these right here on the rowing machine. That's right. And you could see the roominess of these leggings. They have a little bit of, give to them along the leg seam. So a little bit, I guess, flowier or just roomier than a legging would be. And then you also see this beautiful embroidery down that panel on the side of the leg. So if you really want to gild the lily here and you want to use your serger for making the pants, and then maybe you want to use your sewing machine for hemming the pants or top stitching, and then you want to use your embroidery machine to add a beautiful large scale embroidery down the leg of the pants, you've used 3 different sewing machine types and all sorts of techniques to create a comfy, roomy pair of pants that you will literally wear everywhere. You can create these as pajamas, as regular pants, that just an everyday pant, great for travel, and we do have a limited number of kits available if you like this charcoal black. This is another brushed fabric, and forgive me, I am forgetting what type of fabric this is, but it is in the description of the kit. You get 4 spools of thread that match the fabric in this charcoal black color so that you can use your serger to construct them. And then you get 2 decorative thread spools for either top stitching and or machine embroidery. You will get 1 spool of Poly Deco in the gold color and 1 spool of Poly Sparkle in the gold color. So if you want a little bit of metallic running through your celestial design that goes down the pant leg, you can use the Poly Sparkle. And then you can do some decorative top stitching on your hems and on your waistband using that Poly Deco, or vice versa. You get the idea. And the stabilizer that you are seeing here, Action Back. Is everyone familiar with Action Back yet? Because Action Back is a brand new stabilizer that we've only had at sulky.com for a small while. And it is the stabilizer that you want to use if you want to add embroidery to stretchy fabrics, performance wear fabrics, spandex fabrics, swimwear, or fabrics like this for stretchy lounge pants, stretchy leggings, stretchy pajama pants. Action Back is a cutaway variety, and it is so fantastic to use. There is no puckering when you do your embroidery. Of course, there are embroidery considerations to take into account. For example, you really don't want to use an embroidery design with heavy fill stitches on a stretchy garment. It's kind of goes without saying, but if you add all this density with thread and then you go to stretch the garment, you're going to have some issues or some distortion with a design that has a lot of fill or a lot of intersecting, heavyweight areas of thread. So you want to use an open design like I showed you here, which is a line art design. Now this design has, I think, 3 or 4 thread passes over it. It's kind of a sketchy type of design. And that's really what you want to look for when you want to add embroidery to something like this. But let's say you want to put a monogram or something like that on a golf shirt, on a performance weight shirt, on a soccer jersey, something like that. With this Action Back, put 2 layers and then do your thicker embroidery on it, or your more fill stitch embroidery on it. That Action Back stays in place. You just cut it away beyond the perimeter a little bit. And when you go to stretch it, it supports all of those stitches for you. So even though your fabric is stretching, the stabilizer is not stretching underneath those stitches. So this stabilizer is really great, and I think you'll love working with it. Whether you choose to use it for your lounge pants or not, you can have this 1 yard pack on hand for future projects as well. Sharon says, name the stabilizer again, please. It is called Action Back. Love that. Susan has never heard of it. Glad I could tell you about it today. All right. Leslie says, I have a great serger, but threading is a nightmare. There are certain things that you do have to do when you're threading your serger, and it really varies by brand, make, and model. I know some of them you have to have like a lever that's up when you're serging. And if you forget to put that lever up, even if you have your presser foot up, then it's not going to thread properly. And then we sit there for 2 hours wondering why we can't get it to do this. And all we needed to do was lift this lever. There's just like little nuances with each brand, make, and model. So I highly suggest your serger manual. Some newer sewing machine models don't even come with manuals anymore because they're like this thick and they can't even afford to print them anymore. But you should be able to find all the manuals that you need online. Search up the chapter on threading, print it out. Have it with your serger at all times, wherever you store your serger. That way, every time you pull it out, you can just give yourself a little refresher course on threading it. And it will start to become automatic, just like threading our sewing machine becomes automatic. When you first get a sewing machine, and this happens to me whenever I'm teaching someone new, they're just like, how am I supposed to know it goes here, 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 around here, and through the needle? But we are so used to it, doing it all day long, or, doing it so frequently that we're just like boop, 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 and threaded. So the more you use your serger, the more you have that manual with your serger, the more comfortable with threading it you are going to become. And I really suggest that if you, and listen, when I first got my serger, I had white thread in it constantly. And I mean, never change the thread unless I ran out of thread. And now to me, that's just blasphemous because I've just gotten more familiar with it, used it more and more, forced myself to thread it more and more because, you know, the more we do it, the more we're going to get used to it. So I know you can do it. I want to encourage you because you can do some really pretty decorative applications. Even if you're just swapping out the loopers, give that a go. Learn how to thread those just like the back of your hand. And you'll have so much more fun, I think, with your serger as well. All right. Leslie says you're right. It becomes content. You'll get the embroidery. We work our way through that kit. All kinds of things are included when you purchase up the session, as opposed to just purchasing up the pattern separately. So that's where you can find that. All right. Thank you. Sandy says, great ideas. Love it. So I hope that you will stick with me all month long for more serger content. Of course, I'm going to throw some other things in there as we work our way through April. But wow, can you believe it's April 1st already? It's exciting stuff. Hopefully you're all getting through this, first sort of haze of pollen and things in the air and our swollen eyes and our sneezing and all of that, so we can get through it and all the beautiful flowers can come up and we can enjoy all the new colors of springtime, all the new colors of fabrics and threads and all of that. I have been told we have very, very few garden party mystery boxes left at sulky.com. So if you haven't grabbed one of these up, get them while the getting's good. I think we have, oh gosh, I don't even know, maybe less than 10. So be sure to grab up a garden party spring mystery box full of fabrics and threads and stabilizers and little gifty items and things to fuel your creativity for spring. Also, be sure and register for our All the Patches embroidery sewing session. This is also at sewingonline.sulky.com. So while you're adding all that serger education to your account at sewingonline.sulky.com, make sure you are also registered for All the Patches in collaboration with Urban Threads and Embroidery Library. You will literally learn how to embroider all the patches. You'll learn how to create patch designs in the hoop, how to turn any design into a patch design, how to create your own patches, either using your own artwork or using an existing design that you have, and then lots of tips and techniques for attaching patches to other projects. So this is a very, very comprehensive session. And on April 8th, which is next Tuesday, this session will be active and ready for viewing. So I want to make sure you are registered so you get your email notification when everything is ready for you. You can grab up your patch design collection that comes with purchase of this embroidery session, and you can have everything ready to go with your optional kit. You can find the kit at sulky.com. It includes everything you see here, lots of different options for patch base fabrics, lots of sulky threads and stabilizers, and a pack of needles, of course. So thank you for joining me today on So What? Go get your sergers out, dust them off, and have some fun today.